Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is GOM Learns GAC, episode 7.5. And every week we start with speeds to prepare for. Nothing has really changed considerably this week, but Droidica made the list here. And also we have Resistance Hero Finn. We bumped him out of the 330 down here to the other categories. Just if you have some leftovers, Resistance Hero Finn is still up there. It's just now a lot of people are using Star Killer for Rey. And the speed really just isn't that impactful anymore. I think there are better characters you could put it on. Maybe move Resistance Hero Finn to a either like a more survivability sort of set or a more offense oriented set to kind of make his turns more impactful if he gets to take any. And things, no real difference here than what we've been discussing the last couple weeks. So we'll move on. And also, this is the Omicron list. We do this every week as well. No real significant changes here either. Like we discussed last week and the week before, Qui-Gon and Wampa are 3A and 3B. Qui-Gon is ahead of Wampa just simply because it beats more stuff, right? Wampa beats fewer teams for better banners. Qui-Gon Jinn is more versatile. It's really A and B. I don't think you can go wrong with either of those Zetas. Sam Wessel still clinging on to the top non-Star Killer spot, and of course Star Killer is unique. Still in first place. Clash Rendar down here in the 6th position. Now this one though, and this is something we'll discuss in a few minutes, but his Omicron will indeed be the 8th tier of ability, meaning it will impact the ship. So that's something to consider. And that's something that could be really, really important. So while it's not going to affect the list per se, it is something to consider. And as a matter of fact, we're going to put an asterisk just so we can touch on that in the future in case people miss this episode, right? So that's something to consider moving forward. Again, it's not going to affect how he performs on this tier list. Just something to think about. Darth Talon, number 7. Again, this is Darth Talon. A lot of people disagree with this. This is a very in-game sort of Omicron here. If you do have the R7s, the R8s on your Sith, your Triumvirate, especially, let's say you get an R9 Scion or something, the higher relics your Triumvirate get, the more impactful Darth Talon's Omicron is going to be. So, Star Killers, both the specials are here. I personally think the Boundless Force Throw, the Dispel, AoE Dispel, turbo damage one is a little better, but Force Repulse can have its uses with the healing immunity trying to knock down GLs. So, Yeller. Thank you very much for the follow, Engine. And then rounding out the bottom, as we say every week, the bottom does not mean that they are terrible. It means they're very roster specific, and so on and so forth. Chief Chirpa is 10th. Admiral Akbar is also another one, along with Clash, whose Omicron is, I will put an asterisk next to this too, actually will affect the speed, and it's very, very important. Very, very important. We'll talk about all this stuff shortly, but I'm glad we caught that so we can touch on it in the future. Rose Tico, who I personally think might be moving up next week. I think we might swap Rose up in the 11th spot. And then Princess Leia, again, as we always say, much more useful with Fulcrum. And then Director Krennic rounding out the list. Not to say he's the worst, it's just we only have one Death Trooper. But before we dive in, a lot of these things we'll be discussing I do not currently have myself. And a lot of the R9 stats and stuff specifically have come from swgoh.gg because people just simply don't have all the pilots R9. And also Savitar has put together and maintains a fantastic spreadsheet. Anything I reference tonight in the videos, utilities, whatever the case is, will be in the description below. I do highly recommend this spreadsheet for your own personal files. Also, we're going to be focusing on speed tonight, right? Speed is the focus of the presentation. If you guys want a very detailed, very thorough, excellent video, excellent resource, and be-all put out a great video kind of discussing what each specialty of each fleet is, what counters what. It really dives into the more gameplay, if you will, the mechanics of all the teams. Really does a great video. There's no reason for me to even touch on it. He did such a good job, so I'll link that video as well. And yes, and of course, all the numbers we're going to be discussing, we're going to assume that you have fully ability and fully relic, or excuse me, full 6E and full ability materials on your pilots. So, and this is just real quickly, this is a list of all the capital ships, right? And each of the speeds, you start at R9 and work your way down. Now, Finalizer, you'll see Finalizer, Home 1, Radis, and Endurance, and Chimera all have all the way down to 5. Chimera's 6. And these are basically the minimum requirements for the GLs, right? So you got to have, I think you have to have an R5 holdo for Radis, or for the Ray, right? So you're going to have an R5 Radis. Home 1 is just more important here. And this right here, we'll touch on this in just a second. And Negotiator, you're going to have at least R7. Executor, there's no such thing in this point in the game as an R7 Executor. You have to have an R8 Piet, so there's only really 2 there. And then, of course, Chimera's 6-star. And the Executrix he's a 7-star. So if you have him, if you have all the GLs, you're going to have at least a 184 speed Executrix. That's with both Zetas, though. That's it for this list. Now we mentioned Admiral Akbar on the Omicron list, and you'll see here this 185. Now, that is including the Omicron, right? And you'll see something very important here, that Omicron will outspeed, at R5, will outspeed the bare minimum Radis, right? The Radis, or the holdo that's required for the Ray mission is R5. Most people still have her at R5. So if you put the Omicron on Akbar, you've got a double bonus here that now you're going to be faster than the Radis and also the Executrix. If they have both Zetas on him and R7 for the GL, that Omicron investment will actually get you out in front of 2 capital ships, whereas it was a coin flip at best previously before the Omicron. So that's something to consider for those of you guys that went all in on the Rebels. I think this is a slight advantage. This is a pretty big advantage, actually. So something to consider. Malevolence 184, right there, another one. So the Omicron on Akbar at R5 gets you out in front of an R9 Malevolence, right? So that's pretty cool. Endurance. Is anybody using the Endurance? No. So, all right, and we'll move on. Now these are all the key pilots that are faster than all of the capital ships not named Finalizer. And of course, this is something we missed last week completely. The Finalizer here is, of course, the fastest, and that's assuming you're starting with 3 First Order ships, as each additional First Order ally gives you 15 extra speed, making him the fastest. So, in R5 again, R9, R8, R7, R6, R5, 218 is what you're looking at. And this here is going to be all the ships that outspeed all of the capital ships. Now, at R9 ETA, I'm not sure if who goes first necessarily against the Executor, Piet's capital ship. Could be a coin flip. I don't have an R9 Anakin, so if anybody can verify that it's either a coin flip or one always goes first, if you can put that in the comments below, that'd be very helpful for future reference. And this is just a quick look, right? And you'll notice here we have added the newest ship, a ship many of us don't quite have. We may have it indeed in one more day from now. But look at the speed on the Outrider, and then I want you to look at the 2 ships, or the surrounding ships, right? The surrounding ships are very, very important here. It's faster than Umbaran, faster than the First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot, at equal relic levels. That's something very important. We'll discuss that in just a second. But it's an interesting ship. A lot of people have cast it off as unnecessary, and that could be the case. But we'll talk all about that in a second. And as you can see, Biston's U-Ring, we determined last week that the speeds round down. I did leave the 0.5s in here just in case that's not 100% accurate. So as you can see, pretty key levels here for the ship. Just slightly faster than Snips with, I don't want to say equal investment because there's 2 pilots, but equal relic levels on both the pilots can indeed pay off in the long run. Hans Falcon, TIE Advanced. Now, this is something we'll talk about in a second as well. If you guys can't take the context clues from all the... We'll talk about it in a second. Where we talk about the Rebels tonight, the Rebel fleet. The ETA round out the bottom. IG-2000 is the fastest bounty hunters. You'll notice that you don't see Razor Crest. You don't see Xanadu Blood in here. A fully maxed out Razor Crest is 191 speed. And so Xanadu Blood, I believe, is 188. So, and Xanadu Blood, if it's 1 relic level higher than the Razor Crest, it has a chance, if not always, to go before the Razor Crest. There have been people that have discussed that strategy in the past as being good. I don't personally have that myself, so I can't verify or deny that. So, but it's something to consider. Yeah. So this is all the ships here. You guys can... I'll pause for a second. Hopefully you guys took a screenshot and we can move on. So as I alluded to, we're going to be discussing about one fleet in particular tonight. I personally am going down the route of over-investing, perhaps over-investing in my offensive-oriented fleets. If I want to place some of my best fleets on defense consistently, I'm more than likely going to have to rely on my Rebels and my First Order every time for offense, right? We've been working on our first order versus Piet counter. It's going okay. It's going pretty well. Got a ways to go on the tie echelon, but that will come with time. But we've listed most of these. And I did add bigs to the list here because it's very important, right? These are more than likely going to be your starting lineup. There are instances, maybe some of you guys with the smaller GPs, maybe you don't have Bistons Ewing. Ghost could potentially be in here. Whatever the case is, maybe you want to run double tank. But these are the more traditional, higher level sort of potential starting lineups for the Rebel fleets. And we've already talked about Akbar. The 185 gets you out with the Omicron investment at R5, gets you out in front of 3 capital ships. If you don't have the Omicron, you could just take them up to R6, which is probably a much cheaper investment, right? That's more of a bonus for those of you guys that already have Akbar or considering it. Maybe that pushes you over the edge to do it. But R6 will indeed get you out in front of the Malevolence, the Executor, and Radis at the bare minimum, or at the minimum GL requirements. So that's very, very important. And same thing with Biggs, right? Same thing with Biggs here. Biggs at R7, right? That seems a little steep. I think he's R3 for the requirements. R7 will get you in that same boat, right? And it's very, very important if you want to counter the Malevolence with the Rebels. You got to make damn sure that you get all of your attacks in as quickly as possible. So if you have an R6 Home 1 and an R7 Biggs, and let's say you use Biston and Hans Millennium Falcon as the starting 3, right? That guarantees all 3 of your ships go, and the possibility of Akbar's capital ship even calling in the mass assist to really put down a Sun Fac, to really take a dent out of the Hyena Bomber, whatever their starting lineup is, right? So I think if you want to have your Rebels versatile, right? You're not maybe they keep Negotiator one time. You want to make sure the ships that you rely on for offense are versatile, right? You don't want to just have, well, I got my Rebels. They didn't place Negotiator. They didn't place Radis. Shucks, I guess I got to bench them today. No. No. We're not playing that. We want our Rebels. If we have our Rebels, we want to be able to beat 2, if not 3 fleet, or have a chance to beat multiple fleets with them. So this, I really think it's a steep investment, but I really think R7 Biggs, and let's be real, R6 at this point in the game, R6 Akbar are pretty important if you want to compete against the very, very top echelon guilds. Hans Millennium Falcon. This is an interesting one here. Double R8 double R9 gets you at 199 speed. Double R8 gets you at 197 speed. Now if we're just discussing speed, is it worth it? We'll talk about that in a second. Business U-Wing here. We've looked at all these on the other sheet already, so we'll just move on. And next we're going to talk about key relic levels for these ships. We've already alluded to a lot of it. Basically just discussed it without switching the slide here. But Outrider, and we'll go back here, equal to or greater than 5s in First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot. So if your opponent has an R8 5s and you have an R8 dash, I know that's a little high for the current time. Not many people have an R8 dash yet, but and we'll have to see as the ship comes out, people start 7-starring it, we really get to see it in action. I think this could be really, really huge, right? So I think if you wanted to really invest in your Business U-Wing and your Outrider, you could potentially put a Rebel fleet down. I'm not sure what the best combo is, but you could put a Rebel fleet down that could potentially outspeed the Silencer, outspeed the First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot. They could potentially be, I don't want to say immune. Well, it's definitely not immune, but far less vulnerable to the First Order fleet with the Outrider on defense. I'm gonna keep mine for offense. If you want to switch it up, it's a possibility. But as you can see here, Outrider, 1 speed faster than Unbarren and First Order Special Forces TIE Pilot with the Omicron. Asterisk, with the Omicron is going to be faster than both of those key ships, right? And if you have 1 relic level higher than the crew, let's say everyone's going to have R7 crew, and a lot of people have really been taking them to R8 and even R9. R9 crew squashes this concept altogether. But let's say you have an R9 dash against the R9 crew, you're going to go before the Silencer, which is pretty awesome. Don't forget, First Order TIE Pilot fleet makes any fleet the fastest. That's a very fair point, right? If they want to start with First Order TIE Pilot, then you're right. In my face, right? In my face. you'll still go first. So we'll just disregard all that stuff and just pretend that you're going to start shuttle, silencer, and tie echelon. But that's a very fair point. So we learn here on the fly on these, ladies and gentlemen. So as you can see, very, very important here. I think Outlander, Baron, for those that don't have Biston, right? Let's say you don't want to overinvest in Biston and Scareful Pathfinder. It's a huge commitment for very average at best characters. Outrider could potentially one day be a one piloted ship that's required for Starkiller in your starting lineup and can kind of serve a very similar purpose. And it will definitely outspeed Jedi Anakin. It will definitely outspeed Snips, which are key components too, and Rex, right? And Rex, and even Baron. So you're talking about outspeeding the whole fleet, right? So it's pretty important. I think he's going to be pretty impactful. Biston's U-Wing. Key thing to remember here is you want to outspeed Snips with Biston's U-Wing. R7 plus R6 gives you 198.75. Again, perhaps it rounds down. I think it rounds down. So that's what everyone's saying, that it rounds down. So we'll go with it rounds down. Or an R8 plus R5 on this fleet. I would do R8 on Scareful Pathfinder just simply because he's a tank. And I think he's a little more useful than Biston. But I love Biston myself. So that will get you a 200 speed. Go back here to this list here. And we'll see that Snips is indeed at R7, 198. Right? So, but if you want to outspeed R8 Snips, you're going to need R8 plus R7 for 201. And then, or R8 plus R8 is 202. If indeed it rounds down, you'll see that it's going to be a tie. Right? So I was unsure if it rounds down 100% of the time. So you'll probably want to go with the latter here on these two suggestions, if it indeed does round down. So, whoops. And then this is also very important. You want your Biston to go before Han and Chewie, right? So Biston Scareful Pathfinder, for the most part, just to play it safe, 2 relic levels lower will outspeed 2 relic levels higher on Han and Chewie. There might be some varying. Maybe you got one R5, one R8. And you would have to use Savitar's list to double-check that. Maybe talk to your guildmates just to make sure. But for the most part, that's a pretty safe rule. The Han's Millennium Falcon, and we're going to suggest that it's just double R7, right? Because why? Let's say that the ground, this is specifically regarding ships. It has nothing to do with the ground. Yes, R8 and Han and Chewie are very useful in the ground game. But you have to be really careful and selective with who you R8, especially when it comes to fleets. And really, we'll go back to this sheet here. Apart from tying an R9 Vader, right, there's really no benefit in terms of opening speed. There's really no benefit to take them past that. Because, like, what is 197? What advantage is 197 going to give you? If you're against a R9 Vader, you're flipping coins. And no one really has an R9 Vader quite yet, right? That hasn't quite gotten here. So, really, there's no reason. If you're being stingy and you have to be really careful with your resources. Maybe you're free to play. Maybe you're very light spender. Maybe you're casual and don't have them. Whatever the case is, I do think if you're looking to invest in ships, stopping them at R7 with all the Zetas. I have an R8 Han, and at the end of the show, I list which characters I'm potentially relicking, and Chewbacca's on that list just in case I forgot to mention that. I would go back and touch on it. So we're going to delete him off the list. I really see no benefit in doing so. That's just me, my opinion. So that's something to consider. All right, Biggs, R7, and that's going to be very steep. But there's a lot of benefits to R7 Biggs, one of which is going to outspeed an R8 Malevolence. Very few people have Grievous R9 to this point, and you're going to outspeed the R8 Malevolence. I think that's super important. Again, we want to make these ships versatile for offense and have the best chance against as many fleets as possible. It's also very important to absorb the opening onslaught from a negotiator fleet. There's going to be times where RNG prevents you from getting a ship into the yellow. So what's going to happen when you prevent a ship from going into the yellow is the negotiator is going to favor the mass assist. And your Biggs really needs to take that if you still want to recover and win the match. So there's a lot of benefits to having R7 Biggs. I know it's a silly investment to a lot, but keep in mind it is the fastest tank. And of course, Home 1. We've already talked about this. R5 with the Omi, R6 without. It outspeeds 3 capital ships, 2 of which are the bare minimum requirements. So That's pretty important. Again, we want to make the ships that we consistently keep for offense very, very versatile. So hopefully that helps you guys get to thinking and theory crafting about the Rebels. And every week, and I've already mentioned this, these are the characters I'm currently looking to Relic. So Chewbacca, because as we mentioned, the Han's Millennium Falcon, I don't really see that pressing of a need to really take him to R8. I don't think it's really going to give me any advantage apart from a little extra damage. Of course, is nice, but at this point, we're really trying to get functioning fleets. We'll worry about the extra offense later, right? We need to focus on turn order and just surviving right now. I think tanks and speed. I think survivability and speed are what I'm looking for, and that could be wrong. I'm by no means a fleet master. But this is it. So R9, GK, and C. And I think I'm leaning more towards C. We're eventually going to do C. I'm not really sure, right? This is something we didn't really talk about. You'll notice here the Negotiator R9 is 193, whereas the ETA is 191 at R8. I would maybe... There could be some instances where maybe I want the ETA to go before the Negotiator. Right, so that's something I don't want to remove that ability from my playbook. Right, I don't want to R9 both the characters, and this is something I'll have to test and see later. But I want to leave the door open to potentially having Anakin go first. I'm not sure if that's go-to strategy. It's an option, right? Just like for those of you guys that were wise, didn't put the Omicron on cam, or maybe you left Zombius, or whatever the case is. This is an instance where maybe not relicking or leveling up something could be more beneficial. So that we'll reassess that in a few weeks. But yeah, so pretty narrow list here. Again, Scarecrow Pathfinder I want to do to R8. He would be the R8 I have. I already have R7 Biston just to make sure I can get out in front of those snips, right? That's just like we talked about. First Order Officer is going to be to survive the barrage from Executor. We're working on that counter. We got a ways to go there. Hux and Biggs, right? So I'm practicing what I preach here. I've got Biggs on R7. We got him to R6. It could be a week or so before we get the R7 on him. And then Hux. On the fence, I'm not really quite sure that Hux would be worth it yet, but we have to see. I think R6 should be plenty on him. I don't think we really have to go to R7. So we'll have to reassess that as well. So hopefully you guys pulled a little something from this, get those theory craft wheels spinning, and let me know what you find. If you see any mistakes in terms of this, maybe I misspoke, maybe some of the information is wrong on the sheet, I know you guys will not hesitate to let me know. Please do, right? A lot of this is coming directly from .gg and directly from the spreadsheet that Savitar has blessed us with. I do not have a lot of these ships personally to check, fact check. KP67s was my fact check, and even he doesn't have all the R9s, right? So it's do help out if you can. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Get back to the top 100 for GAC, baby. Bye.